I'm Pamela Smith, and I'm a local community member, former broadcaster, and chief cheerleader. Well, maybe not chief cheerleader, but one of the chief cheerleaders for the Little Rock area.
My name is Rodney Block, and I live here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I've been in the city for about 20 years. I'm a local musician, jazz trumpet player.
And I'm Nate Thomas. I work for the Clinton Foundation here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I came here for a job and fell in love with the city.
I'm Adrienne Collins, and I'm also a transplant. My father was military, and then I was in the military, so I retired here. This was my last duty station. I currently work for Rock Region Metro, and I'm their Human Resources Director, and I'm very heavily involved in the community, so I really love Little Rock.
My name is Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock.
And we are so excited to have a conversation with the mayor of the city of Little Rock, because we know that you have a lot to say.
Just a little.
And you know, that's the neat thing about Little Rock. It's just big enough to have so many great amenities, but small enough where you can immerse yourself in the culture and really have a family feel and get to know people. And you feel like you know each other on a first name basis, but you might run into each other in the grocery store, at a venue. But if you don't mind, because you are probably the most recent transplant, Adrienne, talk a little bit about that. What does that mean to you to be able to have that sense of community related to the city, a city the size of Little Rock?
Well, I will say Little Rock is definitely like no other. I mean, of all the cities and states that I've lived in, one thing that really brought a sense of pride to me about Little Rock was how everyone was just so friendly and they were so open. And I remember when I came here, one of the first things I wanted to do was get involved. I've always been a person that wants to be involved in the community. And one of the first events I got involved with was with the Little Rock Zoo. And to this day, I currently sit on the board for the zoo. And so that's the thing that actually pushed me into the community and made me love Little Rock even more.
What about you, Nate?
I appreciate Little Rock for many things, but definitely how you can kind of create your own experience. Like if you want to go out west for a quiet evening, you can do that. You can go downtown for a louder, more active evening. You can go to South on Main for a little bit more of an artistic evening, or you can have all three. So I just find such a mosaic of things here to just make it feel like kind of a city like no other. So.
Well, you know, when you say that, I love that, because that really does give you a sense of there is something for everybody, no matter what your scene is. And now, Rodney, of course, we know that you you can appreciate a vibrant city because you've traveled all over the place, obviously, with your music.
I'm from Dumas, Arkansas, a small town in southeast Arkansas, and Little Rock was always looked at as the big city. And so years later, I'm living in Little Rock, but the great thing about Little Rock and that sense of community is I live downtown, and you're gonna meet someone that's from small towns that had a experience that was like mine, coming up, small town, you knew your neighbors, and you're in Little Rock, and there's still that same type of community. You can be involved as much or as little as you want to. So living in the city, the amenities, but it still has that sense of hometown, and that's because of the people that are here. It doesn't feel like the big city or that perception that I had when I was a lot younger. It definitely feels like a big town, but with the aspects of a big city in regards to amenities and things that you can do and be involved in.
Little Rock is just big enough to have that real city feel, but also small enough to where it's like a hometown.
I understand that perspective, but since we've been in office, we've tried to instill more confidence in the city of Little Rock. One, because we're one of 50 unique cities in the United States. We're a state capital city. We are the largest city in a very small state. So we have the same realities as a Chicago, a Houston, a Dallas, even a St. Louis. Clearly on a different scale, just due to the population. But when you really peel back and look at the numbers, Little Rock is ranked 128 out of all the cities in the United States. And so when you think about it, when you think about Nashville is only 300,000 people. We're 200. People think that Atlanta is 2 million, but in the city limits, it's really just 400,000. So we really aren't that much different than most of these bigger cities. We truly are a large size city. But when you think about 8 to 5, here in the city of Little Rock, it's probably about 350,000. So we're the same size as a Nashville.
Well, you know, I was just thinking about how there might not be the kind of appreciation for Little Rock that we would like because people just don't know. We're one of those undiscovered gems for a lot of people. And then I was just so surprised to know that, or to learn that not many people knew much about Little Rock other than the crisis of 1957. So there is this opportunity, I think, for us to share that that is a deep and important part of our history, but there is so much more to our city.
The central crisis, you know, is part of our identity here in Little Rock. So people remember that history, they reference it. It's part of the city's identity, and I think embracing that is a good thing, and telling that story and retelling that story. In this day and time, people want to hear those stories.
Nobody else can name another high school that was desegregated in our country. That's the one icon that every class, every student at least has read about.
Because we appreciate what that means in terms of our legacy and connection to the significance of that in history. Do you think we've evolved to the place where people understand that, yes, that is a very important part of what makes up Little Rock and Arkansas, but there is a lot more to our city and state?
Well, that's a really good question. So, Anne Frank tree exhibit on the grounds of the Clinton Center, which is outdoors, it kind of talks about intersections of injustice. So, of course, Central High School happened a few blocks, maybe a few miles from the Clinton Center, but the Indian Removal Act, Trail of Tears, was also on the grounds of the Clinton Center, and we had Japanese internment camps in South Arkansas as well. And knowing that Arkansas has, you know, a very important part in history of sometimes the injustices of history, and showing too how some of those residual effects are still impacting our city, despite the fact that we're majority minority, is something that I think gives more color to the city and begs bigger questions. And I think it challenges people from outside of the state to kind of grapple with things that they might not experience in their hometown, but it's all happening here in some spot in Little Rock.
And obviously something that we can continue to learn from and grow, I think. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Adrienne?
I just wanted to say, I know when I came to Little Rock, I didn't know all of the history, and you know, it's horrible that I admit that, but it also was a learning tool for me to know what has previously happened. And I know I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but I know it's been said that if you don't learn the history, you're doomed to repeat it. And so it was one of the things that really inspired me to learn more about Little Rock and to be a part of the change so that I can make an impact for future generations.
And I think it's really important also as part of that journey is that we have the facilities and the means within the city to help understand that, promote understanding, but to help celebrate the heroes who helped shape who we are and how we've gotten even to the place we are today.
Oh, I think it's a part of the fabric of our city. When people think about Little Rock, before they think about President Clinton, they think about the Little Rock Nine. But what it meant to not only walk that first day, but to come back that second day and to go inside and to participate and to see Ernest Green graduate then I guess in May of 1958. And in the crowd you have Dr. King. At that point in time, he was a bit obscure at that time, that people really didn't know who he was. And so when you really think about that, those tenets make up the fabric. And then you fast forward now, some 63, 64 years later, to see the diversity of our city, to see the goals that we're trying to work to focus on uniting our city, building bridges, irrespective of your color, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your zip code, and focusing on the same tenets that the Little Rock Nine did, was equal education and what we can do to kind of create that nexus of economic development as well.
I think that's great for people to have an understanding and appreciation from you guys in terms of what perception is. You know, so when you're traveling and you're hearing from people, you hear what they think about the city, but then you can also offer your own personal reflections because you live here. And I think that's really important that we share what our city means to us. So when you're traveling, what kinds of things are you hearing in your conversations with other people, their perceptions about Little Rock?
People love to understand the civil rights history of the city of Little Rock and how the Little Rock Nine paved the way for all of us, particularly black men and women, to have equal education, but for the Little Rock Nine, as well as being led by the only woman to speak at the March on Washington and the mentor of the Little Rock Nine, Daisy Bates.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a whole conversation by itself. I want to move into some of the attractions because we have a lot to do.
Just yesterday, I was at the skate rink out in West Little Rock, and just the amount of culture and the inherent diversity that the city brings. I hadn't skated in almost a decade, and it was the most fun I've had in this whole pandemic. Even I've been here for 10 years, didn't realize that that was something that was diverse and exciting and had great music and great culture.
You know, this being a city that has a scene. I mean, we're here in Robinson Center, which is a beautifully renovated hall, which can accommodate all kinds of performances. But I know as a musician, you have to be able to appreciate.
I think about those cities, Vegas, New Orleans, Miami. You think about a distinctive experience when you go to those areas. Well, Little Rock has a Little Rock experience. Again, we're right here in the state of Arkansas, but I just think about the 60th Central High anniversary. Mavis Staples was right here on the stage. I think about Simmons Arena and all of the artists that have come through, top 10 artists. Just last night, there was a 2-time Grammy Award-winning drummer that was in Little Rock, Arkansas last night. Myself and some other musicians hosted them, but the type of music that you're getting is the same type of music Vegas is getting, Miami is getting, you know, St. Louis, Kansas City. And I think people are pleasantly surprised when they come to Little Rock and they visit Hearn Fine Arts Gallery, or they're going to Mosaic Templars, or they're going to eat Big Bone Buffalo, as I like it, Lasses Inn.
Now you're talking my kind of
Lasses
language.
Inn. And folks want to have that experience when they come to our city. You know, we have enough here to satisfy those visitors where they can get a great experience. But you know, I just think of the 7th Street murals. There's just so much going on in our city that when folks come here, we have this great opportunity to brand ourselves. And when they come to Little Rock, there's a Little Rock experience. Of course, we have the Clinton Center. Of course, we have the zoo. And sometimes those things are expected, but there's those other nuances of our city that people may have an interest in. And I think it's a great opportunity to promote those things.
Well, that's great to point out. Great trails, great outdoor activities, great hiking, biking, fishing. Also the sculpture garden. I absolutely love that. So on that side of the room, very quickly, if you had a go-to attraction?
Well, that's unfair. I think every place in Little Rock you gotta go visit. But seriously, I think one of the things that's this kind of little secret about Little Rock, again, I think we're a microcosm of the United States. We're both rural and urban at the same time. We have parks, trails, recreation that's, you know, can be tested against anyone, and we will always win. But I think one of the things that I love near and dear is our food scene. And I think you get so much authentic local food right here in our city. And I think that's one of the things that we don't tell as much when you think about the Little Rock experience. But yes, whether it's the sculpture garden, whether it's our trails going to Pinnacle State Mountain, Two Rivers Park, Big Dam Bridge, it's just so much diversity in the experience when you're here in our city.
Mosaic Templars Cultural Center, which is another gem here that unfortunately a lot of people don't know about. And it's right on the corner of 9th and Broadway, and that was obviously the focal point for African Americans during the civil rights era, but now we've preserved that history in that beautiful building. And I say that, that's a place that we all, even as Arkansans, need to go and visit and reflect, in terms of where we've come and appreciate what all of those who were before us brought to our experiences.
Having that cultural asset, I feel it challenges us to explore our history and to learn from it and to grow from it. I'm fortunate enough to live here in Little Rock and be able to see it as often as I possibly can, but for others who can't, I definitely recommend the Mosaic Templars. I've learned so much from just being in that space and talking to the individuals that work there. I think it's our duty and it's our job to consistently mention those cultural spaces so that they're not forgotten and that they're always consistent in our thoughts and everyday life.
And that's actually also where the Black Hall of Fame is housed. So if people want to know more about the history of not just Little Rock, but Arkansas in particular, from an African American perspective, that's certainly the place to visit. And you can also find out about these wonderful Arkansans who've contributed so much to our society and helping us to become who we are. Mayor, you touched on something that is near and dear to my heart. You're a foodie, I'm a foodie. We all can appreciate that.
I think any great city has to have a great foodie scene. It has to be diverse, it has to be connected, and quite frankly, it has to be good. You can find quality food, quality service with a local feel that's authentic. For me, on Fridays, I would go to Sim's Barbecue. On Thursdays, I would go to Lassie's Inn. You probably are gonna always find me at Copper Grill.
Yeah, I heard you were a regular at Copper Grill. There's a certain thing on the menu that you like.
I love a good latte, I love a good Americano. And there's such diversity in beans and coffee culture here in town, whether you're in North Little Rock, downtown, West Little Rock, Rodney Parham. And it's just something I haven't experienced anywhere else. So the coffee here is great, and usually there's great pastries that come near that. And also, I'm lactose intolerant, and we have an amazing bakery, Dempsey's, that creates dairy-free, gluten-free desserts that I can eat with my coffee. So,
well, you and I are on the same page regarding coffee. What about you, Adrienne?
We have a lot of great pastry and dessert chefs here in Little Rock. I mean, Cocoa Bell Chocolates, Carmen Patillo. I mean, she's fantastic. And I mean, there's a multitude of more, but I like sweets. I have a sweet tooth. So Little Rock has some really great hidden gems, and I appreciate that about our city.
Well, I mentioned it before. I love fish, and Lass's is one of my favorite spots. And Lass's Inn, a couple runs that little spot, and it's a award-winning. They just
James
won
Beard.
James Beard
Classic
Award.
Americana Award.
And,
Now, see, I know these things 'cause I'm a foodie for real.
I think we have a great food scene here.
I concur, and the best part about it is a lot of local flavor. If you would recommend one experience to visitors that they have absolutely got to do when they come to Little Rock.
If they like to be very active, I always recommend Pinnacle Mountain because the top view is just gorgeous. And if they don't like to hike, I always suggest that they go to the River Market and walk around and just see the culture.
Okay, Mayor?
You just got to touch the holy ground on Little Rock Central High. If you're going to come to Little Rock. Then, of course, we just recently renamed the Art Center the Arkansas Museum for Fine Arts. Excited about the $142 million investment, which is a reconstruction into the MacArthur Park area. It's truly going to be a beacon of light for our city.
Rodney?
If it's in a perfect world, I would have everyone watch a documentary about West Ninth called Dreamland. Watch that documentary and then go to Mosaic Templars and tour the museum.
And we remind people that there is a website, so if they're interested in learning more about the wonderful city of Little Rock, short of having conversations with Little Rockians like ourselves, then they have the pleasure of visiting the website to learn more. So thank you all for a great conversation. I hope that we've shared just a drop in the bucket about what makes our city so great. If you're big on Black culture, you're big on Little Rock.